Welcome to Between the Shelves, the premier Save-O Library podcast. I am your host, Alex, and this week I am joined by Sam from Patron Services. Welcome back, Sam.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming back. And Kristina from Adult Services. Hi, Kristina.
Hello.
So on this episode, we are doing a book club episode, and we are going to be discussing the graphic novels of Emil Ferris, who just had a recent book come out, My Favorite Thing is Monsters, Part 2. Part 1 came out, if you can believe it, 7 years ago. So we've been anxiously awaiting Part 2, and you're going to hear our thoughts on it towards the end of the episode. But just to get things going, let's talk a little bit about Emil Ferris and a little bit about her as a person, because she's had a very interesting career or path to becoming an artist, I think. She wrote My Favorite Thing is Monsters in her 50s, I think. And you thought you have nothing? Okay.
I'm sorry.
I did not do biographical research.
I also did that.
So here's a little quick run through of her life. So she was born with scoliosis, and she couldn't walk until she was 2.5. And then it came back again at age 10, and she spent 11 months in a full body cast. She said in interviews this is what ignited her interest in monsters, because she felt like an outcast or a freak being in a full body cast, spending most of her upbringing in a hospital when all of her friends were out playing and having a normal life. And then at age 40, she contracted West Nile virus and was paralyzed again, this time spending months completely paralyzed. And after months of therapy, she was able to finally start drawing again. And then once she was able to start articulating her hands and getting her drawing back, she enlisted in art school in the School of Art Institute of Chicago, where she earned her BFA and then MFA. So I think this moment was kind of like a turning point for her, where she realized, I only have so much time left on this earth, and I think she just 100% committed to art at this point. And she has been going nonstop since then. The original script for My Favorite Thing is Monsters, she came up with a class assignment, and her friends told her, like, you need to keep, this is like the most interesting thing going right now, like you have to flesh this idea out. So that's what she did. So she spent the next decade or so turning this short story into a 600-page graphic novel, which when she sold it to Fantagraphics, they said, this is way too long. No one's going to buy a 600-page graphic novel, so they split it up into 2 volumes. The first volume came out, like I said, 7 years ago, and the second volume was supposed to come out like 3 months after that, but complications arose. Emil Ferris said she needed more time to flesh out Part 2, make it more of like a standalone story. She kept asking for more and more and more and more time. Eventually, years passed, and Fantagraphics said, okay, we need the script right now. Like, this time's up.
Or else.
And it eventually went to court, the big disaster, and then they finally published it when it just came out this year, 2024. So it was a long struggle. I don't think Emil Ferris is particularly pleased with how Book 2 came out from what I've read in interviews. But that hasn't stopped her from being a mega success. Book 1 was a huge success. Book 2 seems like it's definitely equaled that in sales. And it looks like her future is very bright. So from what I've read in interviews, she's partnered with Pantheon, a new publisher. She dropped Fantagraphics, or Fantagraphics dropped her. So she's partnered. Yeah. So she's now working on a Monsters prequel called Records of the Damned, an additional noir story called A. Rosenblum and the Marionette Murders, and she's reportedly also working on 5 more projects, including an autobiographical novel and a live-action movie adaptation of My Favorite Thing is Monsters.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so she is very busy these days.
It's a lot of faith. I also heard, I don't know the factual basis of this, but that the original manuscript of Part 2 was lost.
Yes, that's another wrinkle in the story. Apparently, I think they'd even published it, and then it was like being shipped from the printers in China or somewhere, and then the shipping boat, ship, what is it? Sank. Yeah. Or no, it was it was sinking, and I think like some government like seized it, like rescued it and seized all of the property. So she lost all of her copies of book 2, which pushed things back. I think that was like I want to say 2022. So it's been a rocky road for book 2.
It makes so much more sense how book 2 came out now, knowing those details of like it was originally just supposed to be one book and it got split into 2. It makes so much more sense.
Yeah, I wish it was kept as one book. I think it would have been more coherent. And I think we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit. Should we spend a little bit of time talking about book 1?
Sure.
Okay, so does anyone want to take a crack at summarizing it? It's a doozy. So I'll do it. So it's sort of like an autobiographical, semi-autobiographical story. It follows a young girl named Karen Rees, probably, who is kind of the surrogate for the author Emil Ferris. So like the author, Karen is growing up in the 1960s in Chicago. She has a little bit of a rough upbringing. She's growing up in some of the poorer parts of the city. Her brother is not a gangster, but he's into some shady business. He's not really on the level. He's into some pretty weird stuff. Her father left at an early age, so he's kind of somewhere in the story, and we can talk about that later. and her mother is very protective of her, but has some quirks herself. Is that a pretty good...
Mental health issues.
Yeah.
And physical health issues.
Yes. So like the author, Karen she's a 10-year-old girl in the story. But like the author, she also considers herself a bit of an outcast. She is really into drawing, like the author was at the time. But she's also into kind of more macabre interests, like pulp comics and monster movies, things like that, which, 10-year-old girls in the 1960s, that was probably frowned upon. That's not things you should be interested in. And she's also coming to realize that she's gay. So all of these things are kind of isolating her from her peers, and everyone's telling her to be a person she doesn't feel like she is deep down. And this is sort of all culminating in her feeling like an outcast as well, kind of like the author was. So in the book, and please stop me if you want to jump in at any time. No one wants to hear me go on and on about this. I'm sure you can add some things to this yourselves. But basically, in the book, Karen kind of relates this being as an outcast to being a monster. And they talk about, this is like a theme that comes up again and again across both books, where she literally draws herself in her notebooks as a monster, as a werewolf. So that's like one side of it. She sees like outcasts in society as monsters who are kind of the target of quote unquote regular society, right? Kind of like a Frankenstein, like they're being chased, right, for being different. But then the flip side of that is she thinks a lot about who are actual monsters in society. So her upstairs neighbor is her best friend, I guess you could call her that. She's an older woman, but she is, what's her name? Anka. Yeah. She is a Holocaust survivor and tells stories, gets in little bits and drips, tells stories of what that was like, that experience was like to Karen. And so Karen has this other idea of like, there are actual real monsters in society, like Nazis and other people that she sees in Chicago. So that's kind of like the theme that keeps coming back in these stories, right? It's like, who is a monster?
Like, who's a good monster? Who's a bad monster?
Right, exactly. So that's like not the plot, but that's like the idea basically of the first story.
The context of the first
The context,
story.
yeah. So, plot-wise, for a 300-plus page graphic novel, I wouldn't say that much really happens, right?
It's more about her day-to-day life and experiences, but also Anka is murdered. And then she is, like, investigating as a child.
That's what I thought the plot was more so like, where it was like we're following this detective story while other things around her happen and we see it. Can't talk about the second book yet because we're not there yet.
So Karen, because she's kind of obsessed with these pulp novels, she sees herself as like a pulp detective. So the book kind of, we haven't even talked about the art style yet, but the whole book looks like it is a journal of a young girl. Like it's on lined paper. You can see the 3-hole punch on the inside of the book. And it's like a very like sketchbook sort of style. So the book is supposed to sort of be like the journal, right, of Karen. Mm-hmm. So across the first book, she is sort of investigating how her best friend or upstairs neighbor was murdered, and she kind of sees herself as this like werewolf detective sort of thing investigating it. So I guess that's like the overarching plot. And then this is one thing I didn't really remember, and I guess is a major plot point of the first one. I'm not sure if it's a spoiler, so I'm just going to say potential spoilers right now, but her mother also is on the decline, and I didn't really remember this until I read book 2, that she's not in book 2, to put it lightly. But I completely forgot that was a major plot line in the first book. Maybe, or was it? I don't really remember that.
It
so much.
Was, because she ends up having a whole problem with monsters, like it messes her up. She's like, if the werewolves bite my mom, then she'll live. And then the werewolves never come to bite her mom because werewolves aren't real. So she ends up like ripping all her posters and doing all these things. So it becomes like an inner turmoil for her.
Right. I loved book 1. I don't know. What were your thoughts on book 1?
So I read book 1 during college, and honestly I don't think I should have been reading it at that time because my life was just crazy at that moment. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed it because it felt like it had like an actual plot of like this mystery and this storytelling. I did love listening to like Anka's story. I thought that was very interesting. I think my main problems with it is that, and I've mentioned this in the Pride episode, like when I read adult graphic novels, I understand the importance of like sad stories like March, which talks about the civil rights movement, or Boxers and Saints, which is the Chinese Boxer Rebellion. Like sad stories have a place, but when there's so many traumatic topics on top of each other, you start to wonder what's in there for shock value and are they being like handled properly? And I don't know if my favorite thing is Monsters does it very well, in my opinion. Some of them, at least.
Yeah, if you are sensitive to those sorts of things, I would definitely check out Goodreads or whatever book aggregator review thing you look at and see what the triggers are. Because this one, like you said, it's trauma layered on trauma layered on trauma. And if I didn't know Emil Ferris's backstory, I would wonder that myself, like how much of this is adding to the plot and the themes of the book versus, like you said, kind of being exploitative or just having shock value or something. But I don't know. That's an interesting question. I don't know how closely it ties to her actual story.
Right.
But yeah, and especially with, like you were saying in the Pride episode, like why does every story featuring a gay protagonist have to be about trauma? Like why can't we celebrate just other things, you know?
No, absolutely.
Yeah, not every gay experience is trauma, exclusively trauma. So, yeah, I that's a fair criticism. Kristina, what were your thoughts on book 1?
So I actually had to read it for a graphic novel course I took in library school. I think it had probably just come out, and it was almost impossible to get a hold of at that point. But I remember being more invested in the mystery and the art than anything else. Everything else just sort of felt like it was kind of thrown in there. I think also it's important to note that Karen is, her dad is Hispanic. Mm-hmm. And so she's half white and half Hispanic, living in a time where she's a person of color and queer and trying to navigate the world when all of those things are considered bad. So it's like, okay, so you have the queer trauma, you have the race trauma, you have poverty trauma, and now your best friend who's a Holocaust survivor is dead.
Right. It's when you say it like that, it's like you have to throw the Holocaust on top of all of that.
Yeah, there are other mysteries to be solved, but I think Anka's story is probably the most captivating part of the book.
No, I agree. And then there was sex trafficking, and Martin Luther King died, and there was just so many things on top of other things.
Yeah.
That at some point, like, I had to take breaks. Like, I could not read it all the way through. And I had to tell my professor that, to be like, I can't read this right now. This is a lot.
But this part of, I think, what keeps you going is the art, too. Like, it's so distinct.
Absolutely.
It's so beautiful. And then you're like, okay, well, what bad thing is going to happen on the next page?
Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, those are both fair criticisms. It's a heavy, heavy book. I feel like I'm the only one, I guess.
Literally and figuratively.
Yeah. I guess I'm the only one who read this book for pleasure. Maybe in the world.
So.
It wasn't assigned to me. Yeah, I totally get it. Is a super, super heavy book that should probably be broken up into bite-sized pieces. You're not wrong. It's that those are the trauma parts are the weaker parts of the story, and not even. I think they're necessary for crafting that character.
Are all of them necessary? And then her mom dies. Like,
yeah. See, that's where I'm conflicted, because it's like, is this Emil Ferris's story, or is this completely like of her imagination? Because if it's her story, then this is how it is. You know, she has to get this story out of her.
No, of course.
But if this is of her completely of her imagination, she needs to go to see a therapist, because this stuff is like super, super heavy. But all that said, the artwork is what kept me turning the pages. I mean, the artwork is absolutely stunning, especially in book one. I find it hard to like. I don't have the vocabulary for describing artwork audio. I'm like, I want to like show examples of it, but you should definitely check it out if you're listening to this right now. Just Google search it. But it's, like I said, it's on lined paper. It's all done with what looks like ballpoint pens, basically. It's all done with like cross hatching kind of style. I always refer to it as like R. Crumb style, if you know who that is. He's like an underground comics artist from the 60s. You should check him out. It's very much in his style, with like the cross hatching, stylized, very stylized characters, but very lifelike almost at the same time with how detailed they are. Yeah, it's just like every page is so dense. Like every inch of every page is filled up with some sort of minor detail, or it's just incredible. It's incredible work. I'm not surprised it took her a decade to make this book.
Absolutely. I think no matter what I think of the story or like my opinions on it, like I would think that the artwork is like revolutionary in a way, because comics are usually put into panels. This one barely has any at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why it's taught in graphic novel courses, because it's such like a big shift that people don't exactly expect, when it's almost like a picture book but also a comic book at the same time.
Yeah. I know you make graphic novels or comics or both in your free time. I know you went to art school, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, can you speak, like, it is interesting as a graphic novel, like you were saying, like breaking out of the panel. Like that's something I used to draw comics too a while, like up until recently. And I too find it like hard to think outside of the box, you know, the traditional way a comic is imagined to be. But this book, like you said, is like revolutionary, whereas I don't think there's a single panel in book one. Book two has a little bit more of that, but it's almost like she's trying to like quickly get a story out, so she like kind of leans a little bit more back on that traditional storytelling. But book one, it's like every page seems like a splash page almost, with like any narration or dialogue or anything is kind of just like squeezed in like into areas where there's no like character or background art or something. Like it's very interesting. Like I don't think there's even very many like speech bubbles even. Like a lot of it's just written in the margins. It's just so
I never
dense.
considered that. Yeah, it's not a lot of speech bubbles in book one. There's like a mastery to flow that the author has figured out that is very difficult with panels and with like regular speech bubbles. To not have any of that and be able to make a cohesive flow is pretty good. I'm very bad at following the flow of speech bubbles, so sometimes I would get lost trying to see like what text bubble was next. But I think it's cohesive enough that it comes across very well.
Yeah, definitely. And it's not like, because it's not so plot driven, like A, B, C, D, E, you can kind of look at a whole page and almost start anywhere on the page and get like I get the idea of what this page is conveying, and then it's kind of like each page like is giving you a vibe, and then you're just layering those, and you can kind of piece it together as it goes. Because it does jump around in time a lot too, so it's kind of like you have to take the graphic novel as like a collective piece at the end, because it's not like a straight plot line.
Mm-hmm.
So I will say, this won, I think, 3 Eisner Awards when it came out. It was hailed by critics. Art Spiegelman, who created Mouse, called Ferris one of the most important comics artists of our time. So, I mean, this just had praise heaped upon it when it came out. So, I don't know. I really do think this is, if you're a graphic novels fan, you should absolutely read book 1. Like, I think it's like a must read.
Oh, yeah, I'm not saying not reading it. Like, don't read it. Yeah. Definitely give it a shot. Just be a little wary that it's very heavy.
Yeah, read it on a sunny day.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add about book 1 before we get into our book 2 review?
Not particularly.
Okay. All right, so let's talk about book 2. So it came out this year. It picks up almost right where book 1 left off, and it's sort of concludes the story of Karen without giving away too much. It does leave some things unexplained, but as far as I have read, there's no plan for a book 3, so this might be the ending of it. I don't know if that's intentional or part of the manuscript issues that were happening, but I think, yeah. What are your thoughts, your overall thoughts on book 2?
It was a disjointed mess of a story.
It was.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely felt not as cohesive as book 1. I think I liked it a little bit more than the two of you, but a lot of that is due to the artwork just being of such high caliber. But yeah, go ahead.
We sort of only really needed one thing from book 2, right? To solve the murder of Anka. And it is touched upon in such an ambiguous way where like it's never solidified. Karen seems happy with the results of what has happened, but those haven't necessarily been communicated to us as a reader. And then other stuff happens and it lands on like this ambiguous, open-ended ending that doesn't really add anything to the story, and I think it just makes the rest of the story worse. We're like, they're not in a better place. None of their trauma has been dealt with. They're literally running away, and we still have 0 answers.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's very fair. Most of this book rehashes a lot of the themes of the first book. So it does feel like this was maybe one book at one point. I just feel like maybe Ferris ran out of steam towards the end of a 600-page graphic novel, which is understandable because it does it leaves a lot of things unanswered.
But it also introduces new questions where it's like we learn more about some of the other inhabitants of the boarding house they live in, or about different relationships they've had with Anka, and it's like, well, that's interesting. Now, anyway, I have to go steal coins out of a bathroom with my new girlfriend. Bye.
Yeah, so they do introduce a love interest, which I think was needed for a book 2. But the question of the Anka murder, that's never really resolved definitively. And then they also introduce new mysteries surrounding the identity of her father, which also doesn't get a definitive answer. Everything's left very vague.
was so confused when they were like, "That's my dad, the man who peed on the window and on the 5th page." I was like, "What do you mean that's your dad?" Like, okay, I
Spoiler.
guess. Well, they are, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, they never really talk about her father that much in book 1, and then almost immediately in book 2, they're like, "Here's the new mystery, who your father is. Oh, that guy who just did that awful deed, he's probably your father, but we're not going to really get to that for 200 pages and never really
like,
answer
the next
it.
time she runs into him, it's with prostitutes. Like,
Yeah, let's have this prostitute say his entire full legal name out loud so she can know who her father is.
there's also that point of the book where like something happens to her that's never like towards the end, where like they never go back and like rehash. Like she gets hit in the head and is unconscious, and then wakes
when she
up
grabs the, yeah.
elsewhere, and then nobody ever is like, "Oh, here's what happened while you were out," or like, "Here's why that happened." It's just like, "Well, we gotta go. This is it. We're done for."
Yeah, I thought she killed her dad, and then they were like, "He's looking for you." I'm like, from where? What do you mean? What did she even do?
Yeah, and then they just like we gotta go, and it's like, but why?
But why are we going?
But why are we going?
It definitely had like a very fever dreamy pace to it, where like you said, like she would get like 80% of the way through like a plot line and then abandon it to go to something else, and it was like never like nothing was ever resolved. It would just jump to the next thing, and it felt like a dream almost. You're like, you know, you're having an anxiety dream about something, but then all of a sudden, like, you're in a new place and having like a different semi-related anxiety dream. It's like, but what happened to the thing where I was being chased by like that monster? It's like, nope, we're not talking about that anymore. We're talking about this other anxiety dream.
Being chased by your dead brother? No recollection of that. Just forget it. Move on to grabbing a gun and doing something else.
I forgot about the dead brother plot line.
Oh yeah, me
Where
too.
her brother kills her other brother.
His twin?
And they cover it up.
If it helps, I forgot who Laughing Jack was until I reread the first book. And then he was so important in this one that I was like, I don't even remember you from the first one. I was like, okay, I guess.
Do you think any of these plot points could have been resolved if it was either published almost immediately after the first one, like say a year after, or if it was as one book? Like things like that, forgetting characters, forgetting plot lines and things like that, I think it would have helped a little bit.
Think so. I just don't think, with Laughing Jack specifically, I feel like he, in the same way of like her father, he wasn't fleshed out enough in the first book for all of a sudden the second book to be like, he's the big bad man who's making sure Deez doesn't go to Vietnam and making Deez kill everyone, but Deez kills everyone? Like,
Yeah.
it just got too confusing a little.
The plot is a mess. I'll totally agree with you on that. But let's talk about the art style for a second, because again, I think that was the strong point of book 1, and in book 2, I think there are some very good pages and then some others that seemed very rushed, especially when I went back to book 1 and kind of flipped through it again to get like refresh my memory of what happened. Book 1, like every single page is like a masterpiece almost. And in book 2, there are some stretches of pages that seem like very sketch-like, where it seems like she's like, this is like the first draft of what she was going to tell. Like to the some point where like I mentioned earlier, like she uses panels to tell like the story, and characters will just be like just their outline, like of like just gesturing movements and things, as opposed to the book 1 where, like I said, she would do cross-hatching, like detailed cross-hatching for every single character. Yeah, it just felt rushed, and I don't know if that's the manuscript being lost's fault or pressure from the publisher or what. It just felt very rushed.
No, I agree. I think so much thought was put into the first one. I especially like in the first one how they have, they're not like chapter breaks because she doesn't have page numbers or anything, but like the covers of like the Ghastly magazines, how they allude to like different characters or different scenes that happen. In the first one, it was very like, oh, like I figured it out. Like this is how it connects. In the second one, it was like, this is a picture of Mothman. Let me talk about the Mothman. And I'm like, okay. I was like, it was fun before. This is a little weird.
Yeah, it's just bizarre. I really like want to know the full story of like what happened. Like, cause if the manuscript was finished 7 years ago when book 1 was coming out, because again it was one book. What happened? Like, was the end of book 1 not finished? I just don't understand what happened.
I don't know. It does feel like book 2 was basically answering all of the questions and then randomly talking about fascism. So, I don't know. I feel like as time progressed and like our politics changed and time went on, like she started adding in more
That's
like
interesting.
opinions about certain things, which isn't a bad thing, of course. It just felt a little random for something at like an end of a story.
Yeah.
Especially when you try to connect it back to the 60s in Chicago at the time. So
That's interesting, because this book was written over the course of 17 years almost. So yeah, you could see, if the author is working on the same project for that long, it's understandable that there are some things she might want to change or update. And I wonder if that was her trouble. That was her downfall, because Fantagraphics was just like, enough with the updates. Like, we need to get this thing out the door. Mm-hmm. And then her workflow just couldn't keep up with it, I guess. Because this part 2 is another 300 plus page graphic novel. Like, it's a big boy.
it's a big old book.
A big chonker, if you will.
I with the parts that I did like, at least art wise, where she spends a lot of time at the Art Institute of Chicago, what was it? The museum.
It's a museum in Chicago.
The Art Museum of Chicago. I've been there in real life. I can't even think of the name of it. Anyways, she goes there and she spends a lot of time just studying artwork, and she does recreations of very famous paintings in the graphic novel in her style, and they're just stunning. Like, they're so good. And she does it a lot in book 2, coming back to it quite a bit, where she's even tying like the themes of some of the famous paintings back to the story. And I really like that. That was really well done. Oh, one scene I really liked in book 2 was when Karen is listening to the tapes. Like, Anka, she finds like a box of tapes that Anka left behind, like where she's kind of describing what happened to her in the concentration camps and how she survived. I thought that was maybe the strongest point of the whole graphic novel, that whole storyline. I don't know. Maybe it's just because we're all wired to find like the Holocaust like just innately fascinating, because it was just this crazy event in human history. But like, it's well illustrated, it's well told, it's well paced. It's just a fascinating.
Yeah, and it's sort of really the only bridge from the first book, and it's what we were sort of expecting from the second book, where it's like she's investigating this murder and she didn't solve it at the end. So now we have a whole nother book where she's still going to be investigating this murder, and maybe, we'll get some more information that way. And it's like, well, I have a couple of tapes.
Do you think there will be a book 3?
No.
Absolutely not.
No?
After all this, no.
Why? Do you think the author's done with it? Or, well, she's obviously not if she's writing prequel books.
Well, I feel like if there was all this stuff about like lawsuits and things getting lost and needing so much time, I don't think it'll happen. I was questioning because they never tell us what Karen actually did, but the fact that it ended with like, I love my brother because my favorite thing is monsters.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, we're done. This is the end. They're not going to tell us what happened.
I think she'll probably take a hiatus and do a book 3. I think.
You think it?
I think she will, because there's just too many things left unexplored, and that the ending is just like, wait, she's leaving, but that can't be how it. Like, there's just, I don't know. I think they need to close the door on some things.
It felt like it was one of those like where it's trying to like be this like open-ended, ambiguous ending for a point. Like, there was a theme there, like, that we were supposed to catch on to about how stories never end or something, but because the whole rest of the book was a mess, it didn't really translate towards the end.
Yeah, it definitely seemed like she had reached like page 250 of her manuscript, and she's like, how am I going to end this? And like kind of rapidly tried to come to some sort of conclusion. Yeah. So I know it sounds like book 2 is just an absolute disaster. Overall, I think it was definitely worth a read, and I will be absolutely reading anything else she comes out with, because I do think she is an immensely talented artist. I'm willing to give her the benefit of the doubt that this is a publishing issue. She didn't get to have enough time to work out her ideas. It seems like, from what I've read, she has ideas for more stories, and it seems like Pantheon is giving her all the room she needs to develop it. So it could be a decade from now before we get to another one of her works, but I am optimistic that it will be a complete work, more akin to book 1 of Monsters than book 2. I hope. And I also hope it's less than 300 pages. I don't think she needs to be writing an epic each time. I think you can get your ideas out in less pages, fewer pages.
Yeah.
So definitely check out book 1. I think book 1 it works as a standalone graphic novel. Would you agree?
Yeah. Like, there's questions that aren't answered, but I think it works well.
Yeah, but knowing that they still aren't answered after book 2, I think book 1 can stand on its own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're a graphic novel curious, I think this one is worth checking out. Just be aware that it's very dark. Okay, I think that's all we have. Any closing thoughts on my favorite book is Monsters? My favorite thing is Monsters?
The carpet munching scene was very brave of her to put in. And in the first few pages.
Okay, I think that's all we got for our book club episode. I hope you come into the library and check out those books. And this was fun. I'm glad I got my thoughts out of my head. I can now put this back on the shelf and
burn it.
I'm glad I got to talk to the 2 other people that put it on hold in the entire county.
Yeah, the hold list was us 3 at this table. And we're like, Kristina, have you finished it yet? We need to finish it for the podcast. I think that's all we got for this week. So thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time between the shelves.